Orcs! Orcs! Is there any more iconic fantasy foe than orcs? Made famous by the smash hit Amazon series The Rings of Power, and nothing else. Orcs are ubiquitous in D&D. They've been around since the very beginning, and your old pal Puck is here to tell you everything you didn't know about orcs. Starting off with the fact that there are actually 7 different types of orcs in D&D. So, starting off, we have the Kirkland store brand version of orcs, mountain orcs. Now, mountain orcs, I say mountain orcs are the generic brand of D&D orcs because they're likely the orcs that you've encountered if you've ever read a story in D&D about orcs, or if you ever had a module that talked about orcs, or if you ever read about orcs in D&D books. Odds are they were mountain orcs. Now, originally, mountain orcs were boar people. They were pig people. They had pig noses and pig faces. But over the years, you've seen that kind of move back a bit. They started out very pig-like, and then it was dialed back a little bit, and then snouts got shorter, or they just got upturned noses and tusks, and dialed back a little bit more, and now it's kind of on the fence how they actually look. Do they still have pig-like features, or do they look more like generic orcs? The matter's up for a little bit of debate, but on the other hand, it's D&D. They look however you want them to look in your campaign. Now, the origins of mountain orcs, as with other types of orcs, can get a bit fuzzy. Basically, all that anybody can agree on is that orcs aren't from Toril. They don't originally come from Toril, they don't originally come from Faerun. They came here from another world. Likely a giant portal created by ancient progenitor races in Faerun that brought the orcs here. Most mountain orcs reside in, tribes or hordes dotted throughout the northern regions of Toril. However, they have formed up into large civilized groups, most notably the tribe of Many Arrows, which seems to disprove the idea that mountain orcs are just groups of ravenous, uncivilized barbarians, mostly because the tribe of Many Arrows was formed when an orcish leader, an orcish chief, gathered together disparate groups of mountain orcs with the goal of creating a civilized society for the orcs to live in. He believed that orcs could not continue as these kind of disparate, separated groups that only survive by raiding other people. I'm going to try not to go on a rant on this, but 100% the idea of born evil in Dungeons & Dragons is constantly disproven the moment you start to peel back little layers of lore. Even the orcs, who were consistently characterized as nothing but a marauding force for chaos and destruction. In the books, the Legends of the Forgotten Realms, Legends of Drizzt series, in the Tribe of Many Arrows story in the books, you have Obuld Many Arrows, the Orcish chieftain, trying to create this society for the orcs because he understands that this is what his people need. He doesn't want destruction. He wants his people to be taken seriously and to be able to trade with the other civilizations of Toril. So, I'm just saying, that whole thing, bunch of nonsense. But anyways, so that's mountain orcs. You probably met lots of mountain orcs and didn't even know it. You were probably imagining them as the cousins to the mountain orcs, the gray orcs. Now, the gray orcs are the more traditional orcs. These are the orcs you're usually thinking of when you think of orcs. Less pig-like features, gray skin, red or yellow eyes, characterized as much more civilized, but we already covered. That's a bunch of nonsense. They're all pretty civilized. Now, the gray orcs, also brought to Toril by a mysterious magical portal. This one happening much, much, much later than the first portal that brought those orcs in. Now, the gray orcs, more civilized. They also brought with them a whole pantheon of orcish gods that still serve under the main orcish god of Grumsh, but now there's an orcish clan, like a group, like a family of orc gods that work together to be the pantheon for the orcs. I would love a sitcom of all the orcish gods just living as a family in a suburban house. Can somebody make that? That sounds amazing. Alright, so gray orcs. Gray orcs are supposed to be more civilized. They look more like the kind of orcs you would probably imagine, like the orcs from the hit Amazon series, The Rings of Power, where all orcs are from and no other place. So besides the portal coming through, the more civilized and the less porcine features, the gray orcs seem to be largely the same as the mountain orcs. in terms of durability, mannerisms, capability, strength, all that kind of thing. One of the key differences between Grey Orcs and Mountain Orcs is that it is said that many Grey Orcs, when they first traveled through the portal to Toril, had an affinity for magic. There were these Orc high chieftains and Orc, even some Orc mages amongst the Grey Orcs that were taught by their gods how to use and wield magic, and even summon avatars of their gods. Now, traditionally in Mountain Orc culture, there's not a lot of fans of magic. There is some shamanism, but most of that's based around getting blessings from the gods. In Grey Orc culture, you get a bit more traditional magic where they're using scrolls and spell books and that kind of thing, more like wizard stuff. There's also a group of orcs known as the High Forest Orcs, but that's just like mountain orcs that are into camping, so it's not too big of a deal. Now, next up we have the Orogs, and the Orogs are the underdark cousins of the Orcs, and not what I originally thought, a bunch of orcs who got really into CrossFit. The Orogs reside, of course, in the Underdark. They're bigger and bulkier than their above-ground cousins, and they also have the darker gray skin, as well as bigger, thicker tusks, and stronger dark vision throughout. Orogs come from the Underdark. It's believed that they used to be a tribe of mountain orcs that in ancient times were caught up in a war between themselves and the joint armies of the Elven empires in the Netheril. And during that war, they got cut off from the rest of their tribes and were forced to seek refuge underground. Over time, they flourished in the underground caverns of the Underdark and even got really into mining, forging weapons from the powerful metals that they found underground. It's not uncommon for groups of Orogs to come to the surface, and they've even been known to bully their mountain orc counterparts sometimes. But that being said, you mostly find them underground doing Underdark things. Alright, next up is a bit of a strange one that you've probably never heard of, is the adontis. Now, the adontis is a group of pacifist orcs. Basically, they live in an isolated section of North Faerun. They're kind of Fey adjacent. Basically, it was a big experiment to see if orcs truly had violence and conquering and murder and stuff in their nature, or if they could be made to be peaceful. And this tribe of orcs is peaceful. They abhor killing and violence, and they will not do it. The Zentarum did come in at one point and take a couple of them and make them into vicious soldiers, but overall the society that they built in their beautiful, lush farming nature community abhors violence and actually worships natural gods. So if you ever want a group of pacifist orcs, go find the adontis. They abhor violence, they just want to farm and chill and live a good life. Now we got a bit of lightning round. We've got a couple of different orc crossbreeds where we've got orcs breeding with ogres. Those are called Orgrillians, which I don't know if I love that name. How about Orkgurs? Or Orgrooks? Maybe Orgrillians is fine. So Orgrillians are just that. They're orcs bred with ogres. They're a bit bigger and stronger because of that ogre blood, but they also have a voracious hunger and they tend to be a bit more vicious. We also have Boogans. Boogans are orcs that have been crossbred with Quaggoths. Quaggoths are another creature that nobody uses in D&D, or at least I don't see very often, where they're just these big, shaggy, underdark beasts of burden. God, Quaggoths are weird, right? I should do a video about Quaggoths. We'll talk about Quaggoths later. But that's what Boogans are. Boogans, you mix an orc with a Boogan, you get a Quaggoth. And then the last one we have is Neo-Orogs. And Neo-Orogs are Orogs that have crossbred with Grey Orcs to create a sturdier, more powerful orc. You don't hear much about Neo-Orogs these days. Orogs were already like a bigger, bulkier orc. And so the idea, we'll make a stronger, better orc, it's a little bit silly on its face. So those are the many different types of orcs that exist in Faerun and in Toril. You've probably only ever encountered one type, or maybe two if you were lucky. So I hope this gives you an opportunity to think about the different types of orcs that you or your players might encounter in your next D&D game. There's a lot more to uncover about orcs, but I think that's all I've got time for today. I don't want to make this video too long. If you want to know more about orcs, let me know in the comments below, or if there's anything that I haven't touched on that you'd like to know more about, let me know about that stuff too. Or if you think I'm wrong, you want to tell me off, go ahead and do that too. But I'll see you guys next time, and until then, puck out.